Azure Policy is a really helpful solution to your organization to meet compliance requirements. With Azure Policy, you can audit your environment to check if we meet certain requirements, and we can also enforce that resources meet those requirements. You can also prevent the creation of resources if it does not adhere to your corporate requirements. Let's talk more about it. I'm logged into the Azure portal and navigated to Azure Policy. Let's navigate to Definitions. Under definitions, it shows different examples for different types of things that you can enforce in our environment. Let's talk about a specific scenario. There are several regulations across industries, governments, and also region-wise. Depending on the kind of regulation your company falls into, you may want to pick and choose one of these definitions here. For example, your organization may want to enforce Azure monitoring for all virtual machines. Or probably you want to have backups enabled for all virtual machines, or audit the Linux virtual machines without any disaster recovery configured. You can also see if your virtual machines have managed this or not. As you see that the list is too big here, and there are numerous inbuilt policy definitions within Azure Policy. So let's say you want to have transparent data encryption on SQL databases and it must be enabled for all databases in your resource group. Or you want to ensure that the disk encryption is enabled. Or tags are configured with certain values for all resources in a resource group. These are just certain examples from the range of policy examples we have. Azure Policy is a really powerful tool to maintain your corporate compliance requirements. These definitions listed here tells us about the conditions that can be applied to your resource. And to understand this, let's take a close look at one of these policy definitions. Let's take a look at this one. Here it says that it needs to have a tag and its value. So if I enforce it, that means that all the resources in my resource group or in my subscription must have a tag and a value associated with it. I'll click on it to understand more about it. Once you click on it, what you will see is a JSON file. Here it says that the name and the value must be specified. Otherwise, the creation of resource will be denied. Once you have the policy and you're happy with it, then you would go and assign this particular policy to a resource. To assign it, you'll just click on this assign button and then you select the scope. The scope could be the entire subscription or a specific resource group. You also have the options to exclude. So you can specify the resources that needs to be excluded by selecting this launch scope selector. Once you've selected the scope and exclusions, it's also important to address the tag and the value. What should be the tag and its associated value? That is specified under the parameters section. Now let's say I specify the tag as business unit and the tag value as information systems. This is the summary, and finally click on create. So now I've assigned my policy with my resource group. That means that any resource that is created in my resource group will have the tag and the value that I mentioned during its creation. You can see the assignments in the assignment section, and this is what it is. Right now I have just one policy under required tag and its value. Once you have selected the definition and assigned it to a resource or a subscription, you can go to the compliance section. In the compliance section, it will show me everything that is not compliant. That means that we can enforce compliance or maybe audit and report on things that are not compliant. We just created it and it is still running, and hence the compliance state is not started. While we're talking about Azure Policy, let's also talk about the initiative definition. This is under the definition section. If I click on initiative definition, it will give me a similar wizard. But what is initiative definition? Initiative definition is a collection of policies. So if you really want to create a complex, single, unified policy for your organization, you will create an initiative definition. So you can create multiple policies under a single initiative definition. So I'm just adding all of these policies that are there, or at least the ones that are required for my organization. And that means that I will have the selected policies under a single unified initiative definition. So what is an initiative definition? Well, basically it's just a collection of multiple policies under a single umbrella called as initiative definition. So Azure Policy helps organizations to ensure internal policies and rules are being adhered to. Things like naming conventions being followed. Is a certain SKU allowed? Do you want to enforce the creation of resources in a particular region? How about resource tagging? Or probably you want to make sure that the VM size can be enforced to a specific size in your subscription. So you can enforce or prevent or report on things that do not comply to your organization-wide requirements. Azure Policy is a really powerful tool and helps us meet compliance requirements in your organization.